Excuse me. You suggested that in addition to running the port itself as a green, environmental friendly operation, that the new port would be attracting green industry or energy related industry to the International Trade Center. What is it about the port that would be a magnet for green type industries more than any other business district we could put up in Cleveland?
Okay, that's a good question. And first let me talk about the port itself. Water transportation as opposed to rail or truck transportation is environmentally preferable. It creates a smaller carbon footprint, as we all know. So just from that perspective, to the extent, from a national perspective, if we can increase the amount of waterborne transportation, the frequency of using those modes of transportation, we address the issue both of the environmental challenge of the carbon footprint and the national security challenge of dependence on foreign oil. So that's one of the reasons that the federal government has an interest in additional port capacity. Also the prospect of we're overwhelmed in the seaports. We've not thoroughly developed our fourth seacoast, which is the Great Lakes, the northern border. And in an uncertain world, if something were to happen to one of the large seaports and we lost the ability to move goods through it, what effect does it have on the economy? The creation of additional port capacity answers that in part. With regard to which kind of green industry we might be able to attract to the Port Authority. I'm not going to give you a laundry list, but let me give you a great example because it's current. As you know, Cuyahoga County had a renewable energy task force, which has worked over most of the last 2 years and is engaged now in a feasibility study for its pilot project. As part of that, and part of that discussion has been how do we attract the component manufacturers of wind energy to northeastern Ohio? And what's compelling about it? Well, in those conversations, one of the compelling elements is access to waterborne transportation because the very size of what they're manufacturing defies movement in many other ways. You're talking about blades that are 60 meters long and weigh 2 to 3 tons each. You're talking about the housing, the so-called nacelle, which is the size of a small office and weighs 60 to 90 tons. So and the towers themselves are even longer, more bulky and heavier. So those green industries want to be near water if they can be, and they're looking to build wind farms now closer to load centers like Cleveland. So the lake area is a wind farm, or somewhere else in Ohio and Michigan. Access to the Great Lakes to move that very heavy equipment within that green industry is one example. It's a compelling example, and there are others, in fact, that simply may want to take advantage of more cost-effective, and because of the orientation of their own business, as a green business, to be located next to a port.
You described in some detail the history of the St. Lawrence Seaway and the constraints that we face with it now. What do you see the future of the Seaway? Is there any movement underfoot to expand it, to make it more viable? And also, how important is the Seaway to our own port's future?
Let me start with the second question first. It's extremely important. Even with its limitations, if, as I believe, the trends in cargo handling technology and new trade routes continue to accelerate, the seaport is our connection to global trade, to Europe and beyond, and of course backflow the other way. As to what happens to the seaport, as I said, there's been a number of proposals over the years to improve the seaport and make its engineering and its capacity consistent with what vessels, ocean-going vessels, require. And these projects and these initiatives don't seem to get very far. Now, I've not been engaged on the front line of those debates, but certainly have read and observed those debates. And it does not seem now that it may not be the same interest groups of the 1950s that are the opponents of expanding the configuration of the seaway, but there are new issues now, environmental, the invasion of foreign species, et cetera, that are making this quite difficult. And so I've concluded, at least for the purpose of our own port's future and planning, that the seaway's expansion is not politically viable, but we can succeed in spite of it because of the other trends in transportation and trade.
Sir, I want to thank you you have given hope to Cleveland. I've always wondered, now, what is it going to take to really turn things around? Now, I don't see any of our friends from the media, newspapers or whatever. What can we do to get the word out? I have to admit, I've read a few articles on the report, what is this all about? I think we need to get this word out. And, by the way, this is just a little tip when you start designing. Be sure you allow for ocean-going, the larger vessels, because once things are going here, they're going to have to open up that St. Lawrence Seaway.
Okay. Thank you for the kind words. I'll accept them on behalf of the port's board and its excellent staff. I'm simply the mouthpiece this afternoon. As to what you can do. We're already in discussions with many of our civic and governmental leaders. We wish we had a little more support, dare I say, boosterism from local media. Perhaps this will find its legs and that we'll see more about it. In fact, there is some press that is here today, and they do watch us closely, usually serving in a watchdog function, which we invite. We're a governmental agency. But we hope we can excite them as well. But I encourage you, to the extent that you want to share the message. We live in a world of communications which is instantaneous. Some of the most important voices that the Port Authority hears and listens to are those that use digital communication and, dare I say, just community activism to make us know that they're there and to tell us what they're thinking. And I encourage those that are proponents as well as those that disagree with us to do the same thing. Thank you very much.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to Michael Wager, Chair of the Cleveland-Cuyahoga County Port Authority. Thank you, Mr. Wager. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.